Welcome to Kaizen Talks, where we explore ideas, stories, and the psychology behind the world around us. Let's grow, one conversation at a time.
I want you to think about a time you were left off an invite list for a dinner party you really wanted to go to.
Oh, that's the worst.
Right. Or, maybe you were completely ghosted by a date that you thought went incredibly well. Or just picture sitting in a really sterile office room, getting a genuinely harsh piece of feedback at work.
Yeah, that's a universal feeling.
I want you to focus on that immediate, visceral, sinking feeling in your chest. The way your stomach just drops out from under you, your throat gets tight, and your face flushes hot. We use all this poetic, dramatic language to describe it, don't we?
We do, yeah.
We say we have a broken heart, or that someone stabbed us in the back, or that we're feeling totally crushed. But what if that feeling isn't just a colorful metaphor? What if your body is literally biologically processing that social slight as an actual physical injury?
Well, it's a question that totally shifts how we view human interaction, honestly. Because the short answer is that human beings are fundamentally wired for connection to such an extreme degree that when a social bond is threatened, your brain doesn't actually distinguish between a broken bone and a broken bond.
Wow.
It processes them using the exact same machinery.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We are unpacking a stack of fascinating neuroscience and psychological research on the biology of social rejection.
There is so much good data on this.
There really is. We're going to navigate the modern digital minefield of ghosting and why it uniquely wrecks our brains. And we're looking very closely at a specific, really intense phenomenon called rejection-sensitive dysphoria, particularly how it shows up in ADHD.
It's going to be a lot to cover.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we start throwing around clinical labels and therapy tools, we really need to understand the physical hardware inside our skulls. So why does an emotional slight literally feel like a physical blow?
So to understand that, we have to look backward at what evolutionary biologists call the evolutionary piggyback hypothesis.
The piggyback hypothesis.
Okay. Yeah, so think about mammalian infants, especially human babies. They are born completely helpless. They rely entirely on caregivers to survive.
Right, they can't do anything on their own.
Exactly. A human infant separated from its tribe or its mother will literally die. So for our ancestors, social connection wasn't just, a nice to have. It was an absolute baseline requirement for physical survival.
So it's literally life or death.
100%. So as humans evolved, the brain didn't bother inventing a completely new, separate neural alarm system just to warn us about social isolation. Evolution is highly efficient.
It just repurposed what was already there.
Precisely. It simply wired our need for social attachment directly into the existing, highly effective physical pain system.
So evolution just co-opted the pain sensors we already had. It looked at the system that says, fire is hot, pull your hand away, and decided to use that exact same alarm for you're being left behind, go make friends.
That's the core of it, yeah. The physical pain system was already perfect at producing an unbearable warning signal to keep us out of mortal danger. Extending that signal to social loss was just an elegant survival mechanism.
That makes so much sense when you think about it that way.
And we're not just guessing about this from some abstract evolutionary psychology standpoint. We actually have the functional MRI brain scans to prove it.
Yes. I was hoping we'd get into the brain scans. Because it's one thing to say this in theory, but how do you actually measure the pain of rejection in a lab setting? I mean, you can't exactly break people's hearts on command.
Well, researchers get incredibly creative with this stuff. There's this foundational peer-reviewed experiment from 2003 that tackled this perfectly.
What did they do?
They put participants inside an fMRI scanner to monitor their real-time brain activity, and they had them play a very simple virtual ball-tossing game called Cyberball on a little screen.
Cyberball, okay.
Yeah, and the participants were told they were playing with two other real human players who were, sitting in other rooms. At first, everyone is just tossing the virtual ball back and forth. It's totally mundane.
All right.
But then the other two players just stop passing the ball to the participant. They only toss it between themselves. They completely deliberately exclude the person in the scanner.
Oh, man. Which is essentially the digital equivalent of standing in a circle of people and having everyone just abruptly turn their backs on you.
Exactly.
And the kicker here, based on the research notes, is that those other two players weren't even real humans.
Right. It was just a pre-programmed computer script designed to exclude the participant.
That is so cold.
It is. But the subjective experience for the person in the scanner was that they were being actively ostracized. And the brain scans during that exclusion phase were completely remarkable.
What do they show?
Being left out of this totally trivial, low-stakes virtual game immediately activated two specific brain regions, the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula.
Okay, let's translate those terms for a second, because brain anatomy can get pretty dense. What do those regions actually do for you?
Sure. Think of those two regions as the brain's overall distress alarm system. They are the exact same areas that process the effective emotional distress of physical pain.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it's the part of the brain that makes physical pain feel bad and urgent.
So just watching a little virtual ball bypass you on a screen lights up the brain's actual physical distress centers.
It does.
It's like staring at your phone and watching the little typing bubble on an iMessage just disappear and you never get a reply. Your brain treats that like a physical threat.
That's a great comparison.
But what about really profound rejection? I mean, a computer game is one thing, but what does an actual devastating heartbreak look like on a scan?
It looks astonishingly similar to a physical burn.
You're kidding.
No, I'm serious. A team led by Ethan Kross looked at this around 2011. They brought in people who had gone through an unwanted, deeply painful romantic breakup within the last 6 months.
Okay, so fresh heartbreak.
Very fresh. They put them in the fMRI and showed them photos of their ex-partner. Then, as a direct comparison, they applied a moderate physical pain stimulus, a painfully hot heat source, to their forearm.
Oh, wow. And based on the piggyback hypothesis, I'm assuming the brain scans looked identical?
They were so similar, it was staggering. Looking at the photo of the ex didn't just activate that general distress alarm we just talked about. It went way deeper. It actively engaged the secondary somatosensory cortex.
Which is the part of the brain that does what, exactly?
You can think of it as the brain's tactile mapping room. It's the region that processes the actual felt sensory quality of physical pain. It tells you where your body is hurting and how intense the tissue damage is.
That is wild.
Yeah, and when they compared the brain's reaction to the ex-partner's photo against a massive database of physical pain studies, it was 88% predictive of physical pain.
88%?
Yep. To your central nervous system, staring at a picture of the person who dumped you registers almost identically to holding your arm against a hot stove.
Okay, wait. If the physical pain pathways and the emotional pain pathways are basically using the exact same neurological highway, couldn't you theoretically numb a broken heart with, like, a physical painkiller?
It's brilliant you ask that because researchers had that exact same thought. It led to a fascinating proof-of-concept experiment by a scientist named Nathan DeWall.
Oh, tell me about this.
He hypothesized that if social and physical pain share this neural pathway, an over-the-counter painkiller should blunt the pain of rejection. So they literally had participants take 1,000 milligrams of acetaminophen, which is the active ingredient in Tylenol, every single day for 3 weeks.
And the participants actually reported significantly lower daily social pain, right? How is that even chemically possible?
It's because acetaminophen doesn't just numb the nerve endings in, say, a bruised knee. It actually crosses the blood-brain barrier and blunts the signaling in the anterior insula, that distress center we mentioned earlier.
Wow, so it chemically turns down the volume.
Exactly. By turning down the volume in that specific brain region, it reduced the processing of both physical aching and emotional sting. They even put these participants in the fMRI, had them play that cyberball exclusion game, and the neurological alarm bells for rejection were visibly dampened compared to a placebo group.
Okay, I feel like we need a massive disclaimer right here. Please, do not start popping painkillers to get over a bad date or a breakup. That is absolutely not a recommended or safe medical treatment.
Emphatically no, please do not do that.
Huh.
It was strictly a controlled scientific mechanism test. But as a finding, it profoundly validates that your social pain is absolutely grounded in your physical biology.
But I want to push back on this evolutionary design for a second.
Sure.
If my brain reacts to being left off a casual text chain the exact same way it reacts to my hand being set on fire, isn't that basically a faulty smoke detector?
How do you mean?
Well, it's going off just as loudly for burnt toast as it does for a 4-alarm house fire. That seems like a massive flaw in our wiring.
It's a brilliant analogy, and you weren't the only one to question that apparent flaw. Later imaging studies, particularly around 2014, looked closer at this. They found that while physical and social pain activate the exact same anatomical neighborhoods in the brain, The precise microscopic neural patterns within those neighborhoods are distinct.
Oh, okay.
So your brain does technically know the difference between a third-degree burn and a bad breakup. It's not totally confused. But to borrow your smoke detector analogy, the alarm bell is still wired to ring at the exact same ear-piercing decibel level. The intensity of the warning is real because evolution decided both were severe threats to your survival.
Okay, so we all share this baseline neural hardware. Every single human has this smoke detector.
Right.
But that begs the question, why do some people just brush off a rejection like it's absolutely nothing, while other people are completely debilitated by it?
Well, it comes down to the fact that our sensitivity to that alarm exists on a wide spectrum. Psychologists actually measure this using the Adult Rejection Sensitivity Questionnaire.
DARSQ.
Yes. It's scored out of 36. Roughly 68% of the population sits at a low to medium baseline, scoring somewhere between a 5 and a 12.2. So most people feel the sting, but their nervous system recovers relatively quickly.
Right, they bounce back.
But where you fall on the higher end of that spectrum is heavily dictated by your childhood environment and your subsequent attachment style.
Because our early environments build our internal working model.
Yeah.
It's like a subconscious template we use to predict what the world is going to do to us.
Precisely. If a child grows up with highly authoritarian parenting, which means strict rules, high expectations, but an absence of emotional warmth or validation, or if they experience outright emotional mistreatment, they develop an internal working model that inherently expects rejection.
So they learn early on that acceptance is conditional.
Exactly. Conditional, scarce, and very easily revoked.
And how does that translate into an adult walking around today? Let's say I developed an anxious attachment style from that kind of environment. How does my brain handle a perceived slight from a partner?
For someone with anxious attachment, the fear of abandonment is always the loudest voice in the room. They are hypervigilant for any microexpression of distance. So when they sense rejection, the pain is incredibly acute, and their behavioral response is usually to cling.
They just hold on tighter.
Right.
Wow.
They constantly seek reassurance. And the tragic part is that by trying to pull a partner closer to soothe their own panic, they often overwhelm the partner and push them away, which creates the exact rejection they were terrified of.
And on the flip side, you have the avoidant attachment style. They expect rejection so much that they just build a fortress around themselves.
Yes, exactly.
They become fiercely defensively self-reliant. They essentially reject you before you even get the chance to reject them.
Yes, the wall goes up before the threat even materializes. It's a protective mechanism against that physical pain of the alarm going off.
But let's bring this into our modern reality. Because our brains evolved this intense alarm system to fear rejection from a small, close-knit hunter-gatherer tribe, right?
Right, maybe 50 to 100 people total in a lifetime.
Isn't modern technology, and specifically social media, basically hacking that exact system? We are voluntarily exposing ourselves to thousands of potential micro-rejections every single day.
It is a profound evolutionary mismatch. Our brains simply weren't built to process the social metrics of thousands of acquaintances.
It's just too much data.
Way too much. A 2020 psychological study looked specifically at this modern dynamic. They found that individuals with a high psychological need to belong, coupled with a high fear of missing out FOMO and heavy social media use, are significantly more likely to experience intense negative emotions from perceived rejection.
Because they're seeing it everywhere.
Yeah, scrolling past a photo of a party you weren't invited to triggers that anterior insula alarm just as intensely as being cast out of a physical tribe thousands of years ago.
Which brings us to the ultimate modern weaponized rejection, ghosting. Just disappearing from someone's life without a trace or a text. It is universally agreed that being ghosted hurts so much more than a clean, face-to-face breakup. Why does the brain struggle so much with silence?
Ghosting is uniquely psychologically damaging because it actively strips away 3 foundational human needs all at once. In psychology, there's a framework by Ryan and Dissy that says humans require social connection, agency, and competence to feel secure.
Okay, so ghosting obviously severs the connection.
Right, but it also entirely removes your agency. You are given no say in the ending, no conversation, no control over the outcome.
And what about competence? How does silence attack our competence?
It leaves you stranded in a desert of ambiguity. Without an explanation, your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical story-building part of your brain, goes into absolute overdrive trying to solve the puzzle.
Just spinning its wheels.
Exactly. It obsessively loops through memories, asking, what did I do wrong? Was it a joke I made? Am I fundamentally unlovable? The brain desperately wants to close the loop, but it lacks the data to do so.
And that burns energy.
Massive amounts of cognitive energy. And it significantly slows down emotional recovery. An explicit direct rejection hurts, sure, but it gives the brain a defined narrative. Ghosting denies you the narrative.
The brain just hates a mystery when it's the victim of the crime. But here's where it gets really interesting, though. We've talked about the baseline spectrum and modern triggers like ghosting. But the research highlights a specific extreme manifestation of this sensitivity that has been going viral online recently, rejection-sensitive dysphoria, or RSD.
Yes, rejection-sensitive dysphoria is gaining immense traction, particularly in relation to ADHD. To be clinically precise, RSD is not a standalone diagnosis in the DSM-5, but it is a highly recognized, clinically meaningful cluster of symptoms intricately linked to the profound emotional dysregulation often experienced by neurodivergent individuals, especially those with ADHD.
Paris Hilton actually talked about this openly on a podcast recently.
Yeah.
She described her RSD as feeling literally like physical pain and called it a demon in your mind.
And that isn't hyperbole at all. It's an incredibly accurate description of the clinical presentation. For someone experiencing an RSD episode, the response to perceived criticism, teasing, or rejection isn't just a feeling of disappointment or sadness.
It's much bigger than that.
It is an immediate, sub-second flood of acute grief, intense shame, or even blinding rage. The medical term dysphoria literally translates from Greek to hard to bear. It captures the overwhelming, totally disproportionate nature of the nervous system's response.
And I want to be clear, based on the sources, this isn't just someone being overly sensitive or dramatic. There's actual neurobiology and developmental history at play here.
Absolutely. The research points to a neurological hypervigilance. A fascinating 2014 study looked at children with ADHD and found that their brains actually show heightened, rapid early responses to angry voices.
So they are biologically tuned into anger.
Their auditory processing is literally hyper-tuned to vocal threats. And when you combine that with the reality that children with ADHD often receive significantly more corrective criticism from teachers and parents due to their behavioral symptoms, that neural circuit becomes deeply sensitized over years.
The brain is basically just anticipating the hit.
Exactly. The brain effectively turns up the volume dial on rejection signals and turns down the volume on social acceptance.
And because that emotional flood is so agonizing, the mere expectation of rejection becomes worse than the event itself, which leads to this wild self-sabotage. The research packet gave this example that blew my mind. A college student with RSD might purposefully turn in a term paper a day late, knowing they will take an automatic 10% penalty.
It sounds completely counterintuitive to sabotage your own grade, right? But psychologically, it's a profound defense mechanism. By turning the paper in late, the student gives themselves an airtight, built-in excuse for a mediocre grade.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, if they get a C, it's not because they aren't smart or because their ideas are bad. It's simply because of the late penalty. They are building a shield to protect themselves against the devastating pain of genuine academic criticism.
They reject their own potential to preempt the world rejecting them.
Or say,
That is heartbreaking, but it makes so much logical sense when you understand how desperate the brain is to avoid that physical pain alarm. So let's look at how this plays out in the real world. When someone has this hair-trigger, sub-second emotional flooding, how does that impact a long-term relationship?
it creates a massive ripple effect. RSD rarely happens in a vacuum. Therapists note that it quickly runs into what is called a couple system pattern. It becomes a cyclical trap for both partners.
Walk us through that cycle. How does a typical Tuesday night turn into an RSD spiral?
Well, step one usually involves the non-ADHD partner doing something completely benign and neutral. Maybe they delay responding to a text, or they're just quiet while watching TV because they had an exhausting day at work.
Nothing malicious at all.
Nothing. But step two is the ADHD partner's hypervigilant nervous system scans that quietness and instantly reads it as a catastrophic rejection. They flood with dysphoria, and depending on their coping mechanism, they either completely withdraw and freeze the partner out, or they lash out with defensive anger.
Okay, and that perfectly triggers step 3.
Right. The non-ADHD partner is now entirely confused and deeply hurt. They have no idea what they did wrong. So, over months or years, to avoid triggering these sudden explosions or freeze-outs, they start walking on eggshells.
Ah, they manage everything.
Yep, they carefully manage every word, tone, and facial expression, trying to constantly preempt their partner's triggers.
Wait, I see where this is going. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The non-ADHD partner is trying to be loving by tiptoeing around, But the ADHD partner's hyper-tuned radar senses that weird artificial carefulness.
That is the tragic irony of the whole system.
Hmm.
Step 4 is the ADHD partner sensing the eggshells, reading the emotional distance, and interpreting it as absolute concrete confirmation that they are too much and that their partner is pulling away.
So they hand them the proof.
Exactly. The original fear creates the lived reality of the relationship. This is exactly why solo therapy for the person with RSD often isn't enough to save a marriage. You cannot fix a systemic relational cycle by only treating half of the system.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We understand the deep evolutionary wiring. We see the brain scans. We see how it breaks down relationships. How do you actually fix this?
The good news is that clinical psychologists have developed specific, highly actionable tools for building resilience against this sensitivity. But the interventions have to target 3 distinct levels: the body, the mind, and the relationship.
Let's start with the body. Because as we established with those fMRI scans, when this hits, the brain is physically flooded. You cannot just logic your way out of a nervous system hijack.
Exactly. When your body is in full fight or flight, your prefrontal cortex, the logical reasoning part of your brain, is essentially offline. To manually reset the nervous system, therapists highly recommend a dialectical behavior therapy skill known by the acronym TIPP.
TIPP. What does that stand for?
It stands for temperature changes, intense exercise, paced breathing, and progressive relaxation.
Let's make that visceral. Are you saying if I'm in the middle of a massive RSD argument with my partner, I'm supposed to go, like, dunk my face in a bowl of ice water?
As strange as it sounds, yes, absolutely. Splashing freezing water on your face or holding an ice pack under your eyes triggers the mammalian dive reflex. It forces your heart rate to drop instantly and engages the vagus nerve.
That's incredible.
Or doing 30 seconds of high-intensity jumping jacks burns off the sudden spike of adrenaline. You are forcing your body's physiology to shift, which manually forces the brain's alarm bell to turn off so you can actually think clearly again.
Okay, so once I have ice water in my face and the body is regulated, we move to the mind.
Right. This involves cognitive reappraisal. It's about catching those catastrophic runaway thoughts like, they didn't text back, they hate me, the relationship is over, and forcing yourself to consciously list alternative neutral explanations.
Like they are driving, or their phone died.
Exactly. Another vital mental tool is the S-stop-P technique. Stop what you're doing, take a deep breath, observe your bodily feelings and thoughts without judgment, and then proceed intentionally rather than reactively.
And what about the couples stuck in that awful eggshell cycle? How do they break the loop?
They need to implement a modified Gottman or pair strategy. In traditional conflict resolution, couples are often taught to repair a rupture immediately. Never go to bed angry.
Right, that's the classic advice.
But with RSD, that backfires. The flooded partner literally cannot process the repair. Couples dealing with this dynamic need to pre-agree on a structured pause. The moment the cycle starts, either partner can invoke a 20 to 60-minute break.
And it has to be at least 20 minutes because that's how long it takes for the physiological flood of adrenaline and cortisol to actually clear the bloodstream. Right.
That's the exact biological rationale, and it is crucial that this isn't used as the silent treatment or a punishment. It is a structured, mutually agreed-upon window solely to let the nervous system come back online before any conversation continues.
That is such a practical, game-changing rule for any household. And there's one more fascinating neuroscience tidbit we found in the research that I want to touch on before we go. The mimicry phenomenon.
Oh, I find this deeply moving, actually. Research from the Turku Brain and Mind Center shows that when we feel socially rejected, our brains unconsciously prompt us to start mimicking the gestures, postures, and speech patterns of the people around us.
It's like an ancient automatic neural resilience strategy. Your
Okay.
brain is silently piloting your body to say, look, I am like you. Accept me, please.
It reveals just how deeply our biology wants to heal the social bond. That urge to fit back in isn't a sign of weakness or being needy. It is a sign of profound evolutionary neural resilience.
That is so powerful. To sum this all up, whether you are dealing with the psychological puzzle of a brutal ghosting situation, navigating the intense sub-second waters of ADHD and RSD in a marriage, or just feeling the sharp, burning sting of an unreturned text message from a friend, your pain is biologically real. It's an evolutionary feature designed to keep you safe, not a character flaw.
And the most empowering takeaway here is neuroplasticity. Your brain may be anciently wired to fear isolation, but through self-compassion, physiological regulation tools, and structured communication, you absolutely have the power to rewire your reactions and build secure, lasting connections.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. If fMRI brain scans unequivocally show that a broken heart and social rejection light up the exact same physical pain networks as a third-degree burn, what would happen to our society, our workplaces, and our relationships if we started treating emotional injuries with the exact same mandatory medical rest, societal grace, and serious care that we automatically give to a broken leg? Take care of yourselves, and thanks for diving deep with us.
Subscribe to Kaizen Talks, where every conversation makes us a little better than yesterday. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, keep growing.